Court.
Hey guys, I'm so sorry.
Oh no, you're fine.
Hi.
How are
Hello
you doing?
everyone.
How are you
How are
doing?
you? I'm doing well, my dear. Thank you so much. I was sort of in the kitchen cooking and I just wanted to listen in, but thank you everyone for participating and being a part of this. We're doing a whole lot to try and kind of connect to community and provide resources. So it's really meaningful that you're with us and thank you CAH staff for just keeping these good programs going. It's been a really good response that we're getting from the community. So thank you all. And I'll disappear and continue cooking, but I'll keep an ear to what's going on. It's good to
Thank you.
meet everyone.
We
Thank
appreciate
you
your
guys.
leadership.
Thank you, my dear. Appreciate you.
So I'll just admit as they enter. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start the program. And I'll start off with a few CAH announcements. First off, my name is Devon Lacine. I am the Community Engagement Specialist at the Commission on DC Arts and Humanities. This is a Business of the Arts session. We will be talking today about ways that people have maneuvered in terms of keeping their engagement up, whether it be through programming, whether it be through marketing, whether it be through in any way that they're interfacing with that external body. And then we'll also, have some discussions about the internal as well. So before I get started, again, for everybody who did just enter the room, this meeting is being recorded. Feel free to actually go ahead and leave any information that you want to in the chat and throughout this meeting. There will be a Q&A portion in about the last 20 to 30 minutes, so you can ask any of our beautiful panelists who I'll be introducing shortly any questions. So first up, Creative Spark for everybody joining us is our program for qualified teaching artists. The deadline for that is going to be Friday, April the 9th. You can email allery.clark@dc.gov directly if you are interested in that program. The duration is over June 1st to August 6th in terms of the services that you would be providing as a teaching artist. Moving down, our next workshop for CAH in the community, which is visual art grant applications. That will be Thursday, April the 15th from 12 to 1:30 p.m. You can find all of these things on our website as well, and I'll drop them in the chat as we speak. You can also check out our CAH podcast that we have newly launched, which features arts organizations, artists, and leaders in the arts community throughout the city. We also have our Murals DC program grant, which is online, and the deadline for that is going to be April the 23rd, 2021. And then we also have our PABC Public Art Building Communities grant, which is also opening up on the website. And the deadline for that is going to be July the 16th, 2021. Again, I will be dropping those. Oh, my colleague here, Patrick, thankfully already dropped them in the chat. So you can go ahead and make yourself copy those, reach out. We would definitely love to do that. And so without further ado, I'm gonna just go ahead and I'm gonna start introducing our panelists that we will have today. And so Trace McMichael, if I'm saying your name right, correct, sir, uh, is an
Trey.
arts Trey McMichael is an arts leader and performer who is passionate about community engagement, arts education, and social justice. He is currently pursuing his MFA in arts leadership at Seattle University and is an equity, diversity, and inclusion research fellow with the Association of Arts Administration Educators. He has worked with various nonprofit organizations. Why does it keep doing that? Um, Nonprofits and arts organizations such as Arena Stage, Maryland Leadership Workshops, and the NAACP, and has performed on the stage of Mill Mountain Theater, Theater in Raleigh, Lyric Opera Baltimore, Signature Theater, and Lincoln Theater. Through his work as the Education Programs Manager at the DC Arts and Humanities Education Collaborative, Trey strives to make arts sector more inclusive and equitable for all. We also have today who will be joining us, Tara Compton. Parson is a professional dancer, educator, and choreographer. Educator who has worked with the U.S. Department of State as a cultural ambassador in arts and cultural diplomacy in over 20 countries worldwide with Company E. Company E as a co-founder, managing and co-directing the international program of Company E. Tara has, I'm sorry, something is going on with my computer screen. I apologize for those interruptions. Tara's had the opportunity to travel across the world, educating and developing students of all ages through cultural exchange. In 2014, Company E was the first cultural diplomacy envoy sent to Cuba by then U.S. interest section after the announcement of normalizing relations between the two countries. Her experience as a cultural diplomat allows Tara to consult, curate, and execute cultural and public diplomacy programs in the performing arts, visual arts, and capacity building for artistic entrepreneurs in even the most remote areas of the world. Oh, that's awesome. She has finished creating a dance film entitled Peel and Repeal, thanks to the support of the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities through the Projects, Events, and Festivals grant, and has received a second grant to set new film work in 2021 entitled Home to Me. She also is a recipient of 3 consecutive Arts and Humanities Fellowship Awards from the Commission, recognizing her for artistic work in the District of Columbia. Next up, but not least, we have our friend, Marshall Parler, also known as Mr. P. He grew up intrigued by power and every human being having a story, realized that far too many seem to go intentionally untold. Mr. P is the chief executive dreamer for State Dreaming, a Washington, D.C. based intergenerational network, generation of storytellers and entrepreneurs. Why does it keep doing that? Believing they are the greatest among us, Mr. P founded the Creative School, which is a 501c3 in Southeast DC to ensure a growing number of kings and queens 8 and older are equipped to invite their peers and elders to collectively design goods, services, and experiences by using a story as the primary method of connecting their people, place, and ideas. And I do apologize about that choppiness. So without saying anything more, if before we get started with the question portion, if I left out anything for you beautiful panelists today, you can go ahead and add on top of that. We can start with Trey.
No, I think you got it all. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and to share how the DC Collaborative has been advancing our work in communities over the past year, and to be with such a great panel of other people in the community.
Okay. And Tara, how about yourself?
Just echoing everything that Trey said, very happy to be here. I am here specifically in my capacity as Managing Director and Education Programming and International Programs with Company E, and I look forward to chatting more.
And Mr. P, how about you, kind sir?
I appreciate similar echo and sentiments. I'm excited about the conversation. I stay dreaming about how queens and kings in this city can keep their people creatively connected so that we can together build health and wealth. And I feel like this is the right conversation to be in to talk about that. So excited to get started.
Okay. So without further ado, the first question to you all is, what is your organizational mission and how does community engagement help you better achieve it? And I'll start with you, Mr. P.
So the Creative School, as my bio mentioned, is a 501c3 that's based currently in Southeast DC along Alabama Avenue. We're on a mission to equip the greatest among us to keep their peers and elders creatively connected. And so we do that through an invitation, and I'm excited to talk about that today. We pass out bottles of juice, a fresh pressed juice brand that the Queens and Kings own and operate called Southside Drip. And it has a QR code on the bottle. And so the peers and elders can scan it. And that way our Queens and Kings can show up, stick around, and stay connected to a network of elders and their peers so that we can together build health and wealth. So that's the work that I do. I also am the chief executive dreamer of Stay Dreamin', which is the network that is scaling that work to communities across the globe, wherever queens and kings are. So I'm a Navy brat. I take my lack of nativity to DC very seriously. But what I've learned along the way is that my role as someone who doesn't have roots is to figure out how the greatest among us can be the ones that lead us to stay connected and to rewrite the narrative that they've inherited, which is one that says they're going to be born into a world that's going to limit the relationships that they have access to that leads to health and wealth. So what if this generation, what if Generation Z in particular, could be the generation that keeps us creatively connected? And so we're doing this work in Southeast DC through the Creative School and hoping to build a network of Generation Z leaders and their peers and elders across the globe who do the same thing. So go from Southside Drip to I'm in Birmingham right now, making it Magic City Drip. And so figuring out how we can build a movement together.
And so, Tara, how about yourself? What is your organizational mission, and how does community engagement help you better achieve it?
Yeah, I think so. Company E's mission in general is to embrace and employ the diverse power of dance and movement and the performing arts to create and inspire through not only world-class dance on a professional level, but also through tech, so digital and mixed reality performances, education, capacity building, helping to create artist entrepreneurship empowerment and cross-cultural engagement, whether that means within here at home in DC or worldwide. So being a performing arts outreach-based organization, community engagement is everything, whether it be from the audience perspective or from a student perspective. So it's ingrained in about everything we do, and the fact that movement as a language, movement transcends all languages, and movement is something that everyone can do without words and speak to one another. So we really harness in the power of storytelling through the movement perspective to help with the community engagement work that we do.
Okay, last but not least, kind sir, same question. What is your organizational mission, and how does community engagement help you better achieve it?
Yeah, so I'm the education programs manager at the DC Arts and Humanities Education Collaborative, and we've been around in the DC area for just over 23 years now. And we identify as a collective impact organization, and collective impact is a framework for advancing community-wide goals together with other members and other stakeholders. And so the DC Collaborative's mission is to advance equitable access for high quality arts and humanities education for DC public and DC public charter schools. And that work is community is required for it. We cannot do that with our own small staff of 6 people. And so we are constantly reaching out to various stakeholders. And the really unique thing about the collaborative is that we work with schools directly, but we also work with the cultural institutions directly. And so all of our events, all of our programming is rooted in bringing those 2 groups together. We have several committees that we have at our disposal for equity and justice, steering, programming, governance. And we really think that our organization is better because of the people who feed into it, because of the volunteers that we have at every level, the students who participate in our programming, the teachers who signed up for the programming, the organizations that are writing and administering these programs to schools. They all work together in this collective impact ecosystem. And everyone has a stake in that equation. And so there's no person, there's no stakeholder that is more sought after than the other. At the core of our mission is to have equitable access to high quality education. And you can't do that if you're not talking to the students and taking their feedback seriously and giving that to our members in order for them to create more equitable, high quality programming. You also can't do that without talking to our members to figure out, hey, what support do you need from the school system? What support do you need from the commission? And we work as the bridge and facilitator and always having active community conversations that lead to those outcomes for us.
I like all of that, the sound of the missions. I appreciate you all for existing and being a part of the community in the way that you are. And moving to the next question, I know Mr. P, I had the privilege of coming to a few of your events. And I know the most recent one, you all did like a series of locations where you would take these pictures and use the community to also, adhere to the COVID restrictions, but also to try to continue doing the work and creating these opportunities for these youth. So the next question that I have, and I'm gonna start off with you, because I like the idea of the QR codes, is what advice or like what challenges did you all face, and like would you give people about like rethinking and programming during COVID? So, as COVID hit, we know COVID is a thing. It's hurt small businesses, big businesses, all in around. And so how did you all find a stride in COVID, and like how did you all adapt that programming to meet the restrictions, the not only restrictions put on us by the city, but also some of the things that people were facing that might have caused them to not be able to engage in the same ways? Muted.
Thank you. Thank you. Stride is a tough word. I don't think we've hit a stride. I don't know if anybody's hit a stride, but the story for us, when we went to lockdown, we adapted to virtual programming. And so yoga virtually, photography virtually, podcasting virtually, chess virtually, creative opportunities for both peer youth and elders to try to stay connected, which is our mission. And I'm going to be real, like that doesn't work. Our young people are fatigued. They are missing physical interaction with their people. And that development, that learning loss, a lot of our queens and kings are depressed right now. They are struggling. And so while we are still offering some virtual programming to adhere to the guidelines and to be safe ourselves, we've adapted to try to create small moments and individual connections. And so what does that look like for us? We've gone from working with about 120 queens and kings to about 20 to 25. We've scaled down 14 creative programs. As I've mentioned, the yogas, the chess, the boxings, the exercises, different ways for creatives in our network to create space for our queens, kings, and their elders, to about 3 programs. And we focused on the storytelling component, which means we have about 8 queens and kings who are involved in a photography program that is at one location with the same creatives. COVID testing is happening to help make sure that we are creating a safe environment. But we're training queens and kings to be professional photographers. We're training queens and kings to be professional podcasters. That way, the greatest among us can capture the story of what's happening in this crazy moment in the human history. And if we capture enough stories, if we pass out enough bottles of juice to our people and have enough people scan these QR codes, we can tell short film stories of what's happening to our community. We can tell podcast stories on the Kids Can Be Big podcast, which you can find on all streaming platforms. The moment that you talked about, Devon, earlier was, since it's Women's International History Month last month, our Queens and Kings invited our network to show up to 3 different locations. We passed out PPE equipment, made sure we had temperature checks, gave some groceries away to our people, and our young people got to capture portraits of queens and kings who were celebrating queens. So we crowned women, passed out roses and candles to sisters and mothers and girlfriends at Emmanuel Baptist Church in Woodland, at Congress Heights Arts and Culture Center, and at the Big Chair. And we passed out Drip, which is a fresh pressed juice brand that they own and operate, so that even though we can't have weekly programming, we can sign up mentors, and we've registered 77 mentors in this season. We can find ways to develop leaders who are capturing the story of what's really going on, but also not be meeting frequently. And hopefully with mentors, connecting our queens and kings to individuals who can meet in a one-on-one basis, whether it's virtually or in person. I think the road is still long, and the recovery is going to be real. But right now, our young people need connection. I think we all do, but the lane that I'm in is working with our young people. And so we've had to be safe, but we also have to be really innovative and willing to fail and fail forward.
I like that, man. That's very honest, straightforward. And so I want to pass the same question to Tara in terms of what advice would you give about maintaining and rethinking programming during COVID?
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. P here on the fact that I'm not sure anyone has hit a stride, but I think what the beauty of the arts is that it is in our nature to be creative and find the loophole and find the way to still engage. And I can't tell you how many times there were days that I would look at Zoom and say, I'm sick of reinventing the wheel. Like, I'm sick of finding new and innovative ways of doing things. And then that's when the next idea would pop up within the company or anything else. So it ebbed and flowed there for a while as we were gaining. I think the immediate pivot to digital, not just for classes, because once we all realized this was going to be longer than 2 weeks that we originally thought, the quick pivot was most important for things like our studio-based program, Movement Center, and finding ways to engage still with our DCPS and DC charter schools who were getting frustrated in the new learning process. They were still working out the kinks, sending pre-recorded materials to teachers so that they had something to fall back on to get kids moving and engaged. On the professional company aspect side, we were scheduled to be in concert with a series of choreographers from overseas at that point in time. And again, once we realized this was going to last longer, we decided to get a collaborative creative brain power together, brainstorming session with all the creatives, allowing all the stakeholders to have a say in how they thought this could transition, especially since so many of the choreographers were international. And we came up with a concept of creating more or less a little TV show that would air on social media called On Cue. So all of these things that were supposed to premiere in person now turned into dance films where we would learn everything on Zoom, then we would test, we would come together just for the filming, not even rehearsal processes, but just for the filming parts of it. And then we would engage editors and video creatives to kind of edit those together. And then we would fill it with other sort of reporting, either chats with the choreographers, which unless people were present, in the room, they would have never gotten to have this sort of talk back with a choreographer from international in a live performance. So we took these aspects that could increase engagement over our social media as opposed to people buying a ticket and being in the theater. And we realized how much more engagement we could have with our community and how many more people could see this work that wouldn't normally buy a ticket to Kennedy Center or buy a ticket out at Atlas. But now, because it's available in their home, they were able to engage. And we would also fill that with advice for other creatives. What's the coolest new digital application that you can download for free to create and build choreography or sets? What are the best ways to be teaching on Zoom for a dance teacher? And trying to find things that were relevant to the moment for everyone else trying to navigate this at the same time. And then lastly, when it came to grants, we do a lot of State Department work and those grants come out periodically. But what we realized is that people that aren't creatives had no idea what to do now that all their programming was canceled. And they had all these canceled programs and things that had to be done. And they could not physically or mentally think of the way to do it. So we jumped in and said, okay, let's find a way to turn a program completely digital from across the world. And now we're talking about capturing the moment or story, as Mr. P was saying, but from multiple international perspectives. So what is the same with all of us that we're going through? What's different? How can we still create this cross-cultural communication without without, and being able to express the moment while still creating high quality art.
Interesting. So I hear different industries adapting in different ways. Some industries collide, or you having to lean on other industries to make those type of relationships to be able to create a foundation for yourself. And so, same question to you, Trey, in terms of, what advice would you give about maintaining and rethinking programming during COVID, and especially because I know you all had brought up earlier about like field trips. So something like that, like how do you maintain that during, COVID?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to lie and pretend that it was easy because it was extremely difficult. And I think we can all agree that when this first began, it was like every idea was a good idea because none of us had been in this experience before, right? And so if you thought this would work, let's go ahead and try it out. If you think that works, all right, I'm down, let's try it out. And we did that for several months. And so my advice would be to stop building the plane while you're flying it and build a better plane and have a better flight. And what I mean by that is in the very beginning of the pandemic, we were doing a lot of pivots every few months, few weeks or so, having daily conversations with our community about what the needs are, sending out surveys. And it was a lot to change. The rules were changing every week, and we were building something that was adapting as things were moving. But I'll tell you that it led to a lot of burnout on the staff end, on the teacher end, and on the community end to have all of these changes. And so something that we did at the collaborative is really kind of put a stop to all of the changes for just a period of time and figure out, okay, let's really listen and evaluate what these needs are going to be. Let's build something that's going to be sustainable and it's going to be actually fruitful and helpful to the community. Let's build that better plan and have that better flight. So when the pandemic first started, we knew that at the core of our organization, arts and humanities education was not something that could just stop. We knew that that is something that must continue for our students, whether they're at home or whether they're in the school building, because that's core to who we are and core to our beliefs. And so we created a distance learning resource database within the first week of the pandemic, and we put a call out to all sorts of organizations in DC, in other areas as well, to ask them for what materials do they have, what resources, what videos, what archives. And we built a database in about a week with over 200 resources from DC arts organizations, teaching artists, practitioners. It was amazing. But we saw that that was not in of itself going to be sustainable. That yes, some people would come on, but there was no way to track who was using it. Assessment and evaluation is a huge part of what we do. There was no way to do that. But we knew that we had a good thing. We started seeing activity across the country and throughout the world on our database that really just focused on DC arts and humanities. And we thought that was really special. And so we started pivoting and thinking about, okay, well, this is going to really work. How do we get synchronous engagement to happen? Because like Mr. P was saying, that one-on-one, that face-to-face is so valuable to our students, to our teachers, and to our creative community, right? The art that we're making, the art that we participate in, we have to show that. We have to make sure that that's always happening and that students are taking it because it's valuable. It's valuable to us, it's valuable to them, and it's learning we know is required and necessary. And so we, purchased some technology, we did a whole lot of trial runs, worked with some community education organizations over the summer and a limited number of our members to trial some synchronous engagement workshops through Microsoft Teams and on Zoom, and we got Zoom bombed a couple times and we got hacked and we failed and we failed and we failed. And then we, like I said, we stopped and we said, okay, well, what are we going to do? And we set up a system where teachers and educators can connect directly, where teachers are able to request over 100 online resources and programs and connect with our members directly to make sure that they're having synchronous and asynchronous learning. And we've actually found that in our new system, we've had more than 10,000 additional students interact with our virtual programming in January to March of this year than we did of January to March before the pandemic. And I think that's because of our intentional listening and our always saying, what are the needs? How can we do it? And I always like to say, in an ideal world, what will you need to make what you want to do successful? And understanding that that's not going to be, you know, completely possible, the 100% of your ideal world, but what can I hear that ideal? Can I hear that dream? Can I hear that big thought? And then can my organization go to work to see what we can do to get as close to that as possible? Because if we're all striving for the same thing, if my mission at the end of the day is your mission, at the end of the day is our community need, then I'm going to want to do that work for you and for the community, because I also see it as valuable and as unwavering. And so to wrap that up, build a better plane, have a better flight, because I think that's at the core of what we all want and strive to do.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that answer in terms of a completely different perspective. As you know, most institutions are naturally would like to pivot. It's just the knee-jerk reaction to do so in terms of surviving. And before I move into the next question, if anyone wants to be put in the queue to ask a question when our Q&A portion comes up, just please raise your hand on the side as they're having a discussion, and I'll kindly write your name down and then just click on and de-raise your hand. So with that being said, you touched on it a little bit. I feel like we're a little bit in sync here, because you had mentioned throughout that process that there was a part of it where you all stopped. And I think that's very important to do as you get to reflect and assess. But in that stopping, the next question that I have for you all, because we all know part of the community engagement portion is not only how you engage externally, but how you are engaging with your employees, your leadership, and all of those different things to keep morale and to keep people from that burnout and to mitigate as much damage as possible. So that leads me to ask you in that time, and I'll keep it at you since you brought it up. In that time that you all stopped, how did you engage internally to keep that morale, to mitigate that damage, to keep your staff in place so that you all could engage the community in an external way?
That's a really excellent question. And I'll also say and be transparent and say that that was very difficult for us. And I think because of several reasons. I think that my organization internally is extremely diverse, of all ages, racial background. I personally, Mr. P, you were talking about Gen Z. I identify as a Gen Z, and my executive director does not identify as a Gen Z, or the other staff members. And so there's generational divide. There's so much that was going on in the world in terms of the election, in terms of the protests happening in DC. And we were all experiencing those things very differently. I experienced that very differently as a queer Black man than my executive director did as a Jewish white woman. And so how do we come to a place where we're doing this work in our community, but we can't ignore that there's stuff happening outside of our walls, right? If we look at this as a neighborhood, my house is on fire, someone else's house is flooded, another person's foundation is sinking, and all of those need to be addressed at the same time, and they're all important. And so as an internal staff, we have to give each other a lot of grace and a lot of communication, almost over communication, to a point of saying, hey, this is what I need today. This is how I'm feeling today. I need this break. I need to take this time for myself so that I can come back rejuvenated. If I really care about this mission and if I really care about the work that I want to do, I can't do it from a place where I'm already feeling a deficit, where I'm already feeling this weight on my shoulder, going outside of the house or being inside of the house and watching the news and experiencing all types of fear and collective trauma that I think we've all gone through over the past year. And so as an internal staff, it was making sure that I was communicating those needs, and that my other staff, the people who I supervise, that they were all communicating those needs as well, and understanding that we're all going to experiencing things differently, that my needs are not going to be your needs, and that communicating in this way is not how we started off as a team, it's how we've become as a team. And so we're not going to work the same way in this format that we would work when we're in an office where all of our desks are in a circle and, you know, I can call over and say this or say that or see this or see that. And so how can we, again, give each other grace, give each other understanding, and knowing that none of us are having a monolithic experience in the pandemic or in the work that we want to do. In an organization, everyone has a different role, right? You know, I do not have the executive director role. I do not have the school manager role. I have the education programs manager role. And that comes with a certain set of obligations. But if someone on my team needs support, if someone on my team feels that they need a time away or feels that they aren't able to do something, where can I show up for that person? And that, again, going back to the mission and values of the organization, that it's a collective impact. It's my work is intertwined interchangeably with your work, and that they're both putting forward the same mission and the same agenda in the community. And that to do that effectively takes a little bit of vulnerability, takes a little bit of transparency, and takes a little bit of understanding that we don't live in isolation, even when we're in isolation, that we understand that the world is much bigger than our boxes on the screen, and that we're all experiencing it differently, and that we have to voice that. We have to voice when we're experiencing the effects of racism. We have to voice when we're experiencing the effects of homophobia, of transphobia, of colonialism. All of those things are real, and they are on us physically, even if we're in a world virtually.
Okay. So yeah, in terms of, you know, or what I guess we would say feel like is over communicating, I definitely agree to over communicate. Grace and all of those things come into play. And so same question to you, Tara, in terms of how do you fix and move on that internal engagement to help the overall organization kind of be able to engage with people outside, as a lot of people are struggling to navigate the external side, but also the internal.
Absolutely. I think for Company E internally, and for what I would say is majority of nonprofit organizations, we are always going, like you said before, Devon, for survival. Sometimes that quick pivot was because, okay, we had these deliverables and we can't lose the income because then we can't pay our artists, and we have to keep going. So we would go, and it got to the point that the burnout started happening. But also, just to echo everything that Trey said, with so much going on in the world, we took that pause, which was really, really important, because we needed to reevaluate just about every point of our mission, vision, and values, and where that went into effect. So, you know, changing and updating that organizational mission, but also checking in. I think with movement artists, at least, we are so used to just pushing our bodies through, but sometimes the mental aspect is left behind. And the check-ins with the artists, and over communicating, but not over communicating so much that everyone needs to be on Zoom all of the time because they're having those personal things. They need their space, they need their time, but still staying connected. So it really gave us the opportunity, which I think was so important for us and so many other nonprofits and dance organizations, to sit back, do facilitated meetings with our company to check in on mental health, to discuss all of the social and racial justice issues, to deal with the trauma of the election, to deal with everything that was coming in, but then allow those meetings to evolve into now our internal company members and our internal community is having a say in how we're rebuilding our mission, our vision, our values, our code of conduct. Letting not just administrative and board of directors guide that, but actually taking this time to make it community and internally driven by the people within the company, and being able to have a lot more input from that perspective, which I don't know if we had that much when we started. So evolving that way during the break, and just taking time to listen and give grace, as Trey said, but also listen, really listen to the people within the company, no matter if it's their first year or their 10th year. And and understanding that things have evolved and things have changed and people's personalities feel all kinds of different things. I mean, creating art becomes representative of our lived experience. So using everyone's lived experience to make a more cohesive company then made this pivot a lot more successful thereafter.
Okay, and so before we move on to the next question, Mr. P, I would love for you to talk to the same subject matter in terms of what can people take away from this workshop that we're on right now in terms of something that they can use and apply as a strategy or something that you all did or didn't do that you can tell them to actually do moving forward. What advice or what would you say?
I think what's beyond what's been shared already, I think the internal work of my team has really been the focus or a priority that was definitely a priority prior to the pandemic, but has taken on more like there's more proximity to your awareness of just how important it is for your people, your team, to be a part of an organization or a movement for in our stance that where you're seen, where you're heard, and where you're valued. And so what does that look like? That's for us as a startup. I mean, our journey prior to the pandemic was we were in one school that was in a program that was funded by DCPS, and over time, that grant that we were funded by was dismantled, and so we decided to continue to follow our queens and kings that we started working with in 3rd grade, who are now in 9th and 10th grade, and to establish the creative school. And so we went from being a startup nonprofit to a pandemic. And so the pivot of looking internally and really asking yourself, is this a mission we're committed to? I'm currently volunteer executive director. I'm choosing to pivot resources towards the capacity building. And so I think that would be the only, other than from a programmatic pivot that of really focusing on individual relationships, as I already mentioned. I think internally, it was about making sure that we had the training and the time together to be very clear about, as Trey mentioned, what new ship are we building? This is the world we're in now. I hope we don't return to normal. Normal in our community means that our kids have a 67% chance of graduating from high school. Normal means they have a 14% chance of then going on to graduate from college in 4 years, right? Normal is living in the world's most powerful city with 700,000 residents and 52 grocery stores and one in Ward 8 where our queens and kings live. So we don't want to return to normal. We need to build something that responds to this reality that hopefully more and more of us are waking up to. And that requires being seen, heard, and valued, both for our queens and kings, for us to figure out how to pivot and address the mental health and physical, spiritual, academic health that they're suffering right now. And our responses through connection and relationships. But then how does that apply to a team who, if we're going to keep doing our mission, we have to do that our own work and really ask ourselves, are we committed to it? So that would be how I would say, I hope all of us choose to face ourselves and to look in the mirror and to heal, because we are in need of that. That's the new normal. I hope that's created.
Man, I love that. I wish I could mic drop on it, but it's attached to a arm. But I definitely appreciate those comments, those sentiments. I agree 100% in terms of, accepting and acknowledging the new reality of what things are and addressing so that we can actually move forward in a new way. Before we get into the Q&A portion from the audience, I have one more question, which is always my favorite question. And we're going to start with Trey, but I want for all of you to tell people how they can engage your organization, whether that be through online, in person, volunteering, in any way possible. And then just also give people, for the ones who weren't in the room at the beginning, to just give a little bit about what your organization is in terms of, so they can know how you all can be of support to them as well as them to you. And I would encourage everybody also to share, if you are part of an organization or sole proprietorship, or even just a person who's trying to engage the art community through volunteerism, whether you want to come and be a panelist down at the commission, DC Commission on Arts and Humanities. We need people. We are happy to help and guide people through any of those things. I put my information along with my email address in the chat so that you all can have access to that. But this is definitely a space where I would like people to share, talk in the chat to be able to, make those connections. So I want to thank everybody for being here. But the last question before we get into our Q&A, and again, everybody, if you want to ask a question, I'll unmute you, but please raise your hand so that I can get your name in the queue. I have one so far. But again, how can people engage you all? How can you be a help up to them, etc.?
Yeah, so there are several ways that you can get involved with us at the DC Arts and Humanities Education Collaborative. I'm the Education Programs Manager, and so I oversee our Arts and Humanities for Every Student program. And in a typical year, we would serve about 50,000 students in all DCPS and DC Public Charter Schools. And we're actually not too far off from doing that this year, regardless of being virtual. And so our Humanities for Every Student application for members is actually closed for the rest of this academic year, but we'll be opening up again in June. The DC Collaborative is a member service organization, however, and we have created our member fees to be all pay what you can for the rest of the year. Being a member of the collaborative allows you to be a part of that collective impact that I talked about a little bit earlier, working with the Any Given Child initiative with several other cities across the country in the Kennedy Center. We do speed networking events, we do connected to curriculum workshops, and several membership meetings. And it's a really great network that over 100 cultural arts institutions and organizations, some that are on this call even are a part of. And so I invite you to be a member with us. Also upcoming, we have a Teaching Artist Fellowship, and the application for that is, I believe, the end of this week. But if you're an emerging teaching artist and you work primarily in DC with DC students, this is a paid fellowship that the DC Collaborative is running and with support from the DC Commission. And so if you look at my really nice background over here, my email is up here, and then there's also some great websites if you want to check out our DC Collaborative Distance Learning Database. There's a link to that over here. And I look forward to connecting with any and all of you soon.
My God, change the view to get them on a bigger screen, change the layout so that y'all can get down this information. But same question to you, Tara.
Yes, we are also a partner of the DC Collaborative within our programming. So if any programming you're doing, definitely, I'm gonna do a plug for Trey really quick, and now I'm gonna go. Company E is consistently looking and working with collaborators. We are always trying to find the next thing that is unique and interesting in the arts. Most, if not all of our programs are multidisciplinary. So they either involve voice and music and composition, acting, visual arts, storytelling, including our workshops and our capacity building programs. We're looking at lecture series from all artists of all walks of life in order to really empower creative entrepreneurs and want to be arts entrepreneurs. So we love connecting with any creative, love working together, meeting, brainstorming to kind of create these bigger ideas so that it's not just movement, it's not just dance, it's not just a performance, but it is an all-encompassing program. Additionally, the same thing for our education programs. We love for them to be multidisciplinary. We like to travel them. We like to do them outside if someone has a crazy space. So we are up for anything. I'm the managing director, and as an independent artist as well, I'm happy to be of service for any consulting or any capacity building or just finding cool ways to collaborate in the district and abroad if I can help.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. P, tell us how we can stay dreaming.
Absolutely. So just first wanted to extend gratitude for this opportunity. I don't take it lightly, to invite you all to stay connected to our Queens and Kings. The first thing I'm going to drop in the chat is just the Creative Schools website, which is and a link to join the network. I want to make sure that that link is, because it might just be join. Yeah, I think I get it. It's just join, the creative.school/join. And if you fill out that form, you'll tell us not only how you want to show up for our Queens and Kings, but what you think that they should create in our community. We pass out this bottle of juice that they own and operate, and ask you to scan the QR code, which is the same link that I just sent you, because we want to take these stories and innovate and incubate them into community-based solutions. In the last 2 years, as we all know, there's been close to 100 youth gun-related homicides. And so one of our last design challenges that we did with young people was to capture the stories, including, being a part of a community that, buried Karan Brown after July 18th, 2019. And so a king that was a part of our community, and peers of his that said, I don't want to just be a part of that narrative. I want to design solutions out to resolve those challenges that we're facing. So a queen in our community designed gums, not guns, a pack of gum, because she heard her neighbors say that they were trying to leave Southeast DC. So she said, I need you to stick around so that we can solve these challenges together. So the Creative School uses story to connect our people, our problems, our challenges, and our solutions, all through Gen Z leaders like Trey, but also those who are younger than him, right? How do we create new narratives of health and wealth? And that's through showing up. So we have monthly opportunities that if you join the network, you'll get an email about, to potentially register as a mentor, to stick around when we're not in this health pandemic. We will revive our programs to give opportunities for mentors to stick around our Queens and Kings, but also to stay connected through designing community-based solutions. So we will continue to develop entrepreneurs in this season, and the ideas that you may have about what they should create to help us pursue health and wealth are valuable. So sign that. But also, I'm going to be real. We're a startup, and we need to pay for this work. As I mentioned, I'm currently doing this for free. And while I'm okay with that, kind of, I'm not okay with creating an ecosystem for the next executive director that says that we do this work in the community that is needed, but we can't value the people who are doing it. So if you know of grants, if you are willing to donate, if you are willing to support this work, if you are willing to connect us to sponsors who can support the work that we're doing to connect Queens and Kings and their elders to design solutions that lead to health and wealth, I would love to talk with you. And so please either reach out to me. I can drop my information in the chat. But we have a program right now that we're focusing our giving towards, and that's a photography program called Royal Exposure. And we're doing that so that we can capture the stories through photography and short film interviews of what's happening to our people in our place in this moment. It will include a photo exhibit towards the end of the summer, and a publication of a book. So if you're of all their photos. And so if you're interested in supporting that or learning more about that, I would love to talk. But most importantly, figure out how you as an individual can show up, stick around, and stay connected to the greatest among us. And we can do that together.
Thank you for those good, kind words. And that was a great point in terms of finding and creating an ecosystem for your successors to be able to thrive. We had that conversation in our last panel discussion, and I thought it was a very, very pivotal point, as a lot of you all on this call do a lot of great work that sometimes goes overlooked. And so I do believe in the philosophy of, also empowering and giving the people who do the work the flowers while they are still here. And so I had one question from a Little H. I'm sorry if I'm messing up your name. I'm going to send you a request to unmute to ask your question. Little H Mocha Debane. Let me see. I'll just read it off. Let me find it. And so it says, can we have the impact on collaborative economics and how that has or is being bridged given the dwindling funding processes across the board. So I don't particularly understand that question. So did anybody else have a question that they wanted to put into the chat or raise your hand so that I can go ahead and unmute your mic? Here you are. Yep.
My name's Lakeisha Lee. Mr. P, I wanted to ask you, as far as capacity building, I wanted to know kind of, first off, the intent and how you visualize that how do you start that? And what would be the general goal for that, and how do you grow that further so you can stay connected and even grow further to connect more people?
I think the most practical way I'll answer your question is we've signed up for a lot of training, and the second piece is we've created consistent rhythms as a team. I mean, most of my team, specifically on the executive level, besides me, we have multiple jobs, right? And you know, so to create a weekly ritual where every Monday I'm connecting with the whole squad, and we're going to do the same thing every single time we do that. So it's super predictable. And for us, since story is how we connect, you know, our queens and kings and their elders, we use story internally. So we always start every meeting with tapping in on like how you're coming into that space, right? So we develop rituals and activities that allow people to say, hey, this is how life is right now, right? We're not going to ignore what we bring into the work that we do, especially in this moment. And we give our team chances to literally type in the same document that we were in the last Monday, right? And we have those rituals throughout the week that help us keep track of how we're doing. And then because of some of the funding that we have been able to bring in, we've signed up for those emails you get that offer those workshops and webinars and things like that I often ignore. We've said like, yes, we need fundraising help. Yes, we need managerial training. We need, like, I do have a business degree, but I need training. I need to learn how to be a better and better executive director, so that the next executive director can lead this, you know, the creative school beyond the current moment we're in. And so it's, you know, with some extra time, I don't know if y'all feel like we don't have any time with all this virtual. You can cram 10 meetings into a day now. But we've chosen to create that time for each other consistently, and then also sacrificed what maybe would be programmatic time to develop ourselves as a team. And I hope that we can maintain that, because it's gotten us closer, you know, and we know what people are working on for this year and beyond, for the first time, and our work is just beginning. So we have a generation to go. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
What I think I'm hearing you say is, by capacity building, you're basically starting from the ground up emotionally and trying to keep for lack of a better word, the morale in an upbeat place. And what you're trying to do is do, I guess, active listening is what I'm hearing, so the people can actually feel heard, and that keeps the morale up. And then from there, you can actually build, I guess, tangible things off of that. Is that what I'm getting? That
absolutely resonates. I think another way, it's like, if we believe that our queens and kings should have exactly what you described, we got to practice that. That's got to be a part of what it feels like to work at the creative school. If that's what our programs are supposed to do, to use story to connect us, then how do we actively listen, record, bring stuff back up in feedback loops, be able to say where we're winning and where we know we could grow, where we're dropping the ball, and be okay with that, not have judgment for that, but because we're doing it so consistently, and hopefully that will translate to our programming as well.
Thank you, guys.
All right. And so I'm gonna go to Ashley Mckinnon next. I saw your hand, kind sir. And just for clarity, because I wasn't technical when I said this, with the raise your hand button is is a feature that you use over here as your participant? Because I saw somebody raise their, so yeah, I just wanted to be clear because I did not state that. So that's all fair game. Ashley Mckinnon, I am sending you a request to unmute. You have the floor.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to ask a question about what you've seen in terms of social emotional learning going on, or social emotional benefits, I guess, either with your population of students and participants that you work with closely, and in their larger community. Each of you are doing different kinds of work, such as like the movement that Tara is doing with her work, the actual virtual programming and going into schools and membership with the collaborative, and then a lot more on the business production side with Mr. P's work. So how have you seen the social emotional component shift or pivot or change in any way during how you have shifted during this time? And anybody can answer that.
So who want to take it first?
I can take that first. Thanks for your question, Ashley. So for us, social emotional is something that we think is a part of high quality programming. And our programming review before any organization is allowed to have their program as a part of the DC Collaborative's Arts and Humanities for Every Student, we review that as a part of that rubric. And so we're looking at what are the social emotional learning benefits that could come with this program, and give feedback to organizations so that they can improve. We've seen that over virtual learning, that's a little more difficult to do with asynchronous programs in general, because it puts some of the labor and work on the educators who are, quite frankly, burnt out from doing virtual learning. And so we've had to be a little more creative, trying to incorporate them into asynchronous. With synchronous engagement, we are able to offer some more support for that through our collaborations with the DCPS curriculum offices. And most of the curriculum standards that DCPS has adopted have some type of social and emotional learning component to them. And we encourage all of our members to adopt those when they're performing any program with any student population.
Thanks for that answer, kind sir. Tara, did you want to go ahead and take that, take a.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think just like Troy was saying, socio-emotional development is just an inherent part of what we build into our curriculum, and moving that to a digital landscape has just resulted in approaching these kinds of things from a different angle for us on our end, including always approaching, always going to our ideas or what we're trying to teach with varying approaches available for all students. We have some students who cannot turn on their camera, but we have ways for them able to still participate in the storytelling and movement side of the class through the chat or through writing. So typically in a classroom, we would be in person physically all moving together with not a lot of variance within that, or there would be different pieces of the class. But instead, in order to support the development of students as they're navigating their own emotions, working in such a remote and distanced way, offering every single thing we do to have multiple aspects of approach. So we're not requiring people to stand up always in their own houses, maybe, and turn on their camera in situations where they're feeling uncomfortable and doing so, but they're still able to participate with their classmates in other ways. So finding different ways in to the same activity to help develop. Of course, just like in person, every student is different and every student is on their own journey and on their own path. So meeting the student where they are individually still, if that means breakout rooms or otherwise, check-ins, as Mr. P was saying, for the students, and then building from there. It's definitely adjusted all of our syllabus materials, but Finding things also, movement is supposed to be joyful. It's supposed to be, especially during in-school programming, the break in their day. It's supposed to be getting up and not specifically staring at a screen, but being able to be creative and outside of a general structure. So employing things that are more geared towards things they still enjoy on a digital landscape. So sometimes we're teaching modern dance technique, but in a TikTok style of dance. So we call it a challenge and we make something. So when we're approaching 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, we're actually getting more engagement, A, because they want to move, but B, they're not in front of each other, and C, it's something that they can relate to and it makes it fun. So while still using movement and storytelling to help progress emotion, we're also there to be a support system emotionally to get these students moving.
Mr. P, you up?
Yeah, so I've mentioned some of this, so I'll try to be brief. I think the biggest pivot after attempting virtual learning for really 3 months, April through June of 2020. That's what year that was, last year, right? But you know, after attempting that and just listening to our young people, like, we need to be connected. We need to feel connected. And so what it's caused us is to scale, like I said, from 120 to about 25, and to create really small moments where these young people are leaders. So now we don't just have a photography program. We have young people who see themselves as photographers and could teach their peers when we open back up how to be photographers. We have podcasters who are keeping track in an audio way of what's happening in our community, and that could teach, you know, a group of students next year. So it's focused on those social awareness, leadership skills, community responsibility, and having young people feel like we, as the staff of the creative school in particular, are still very much involved in their lives, right? And that's not what we were doing. We had 120 young people working with us. And so, yes, I have the individual relationships with my godson and the people who we started these programmings with, but now now they're staying at my house, doing school from my house. We're taking them to the gravesite of Quran so that they can see those that they've lost. We're figuring out how to help them mow lawns in the summer so they can get some be outside and, you know, still be socially distant, but make some bread during the summer to respond to being in the house all of the time. And so programmatically, shrinking programs, smaller settings, much smaller numbers, and then obviously our focus on recruiting the 77 mentors that we're training and getting cleared. But at the end of the day, it's about showing up for specific kids and believing that doing so and equipping them to be ready whenever we're able to open back up to programming, we'll be stronger internally, and we'll have the leaders that are necessary for us to do larger work. But it's been a huge loss for us to have to work with such a small number of queens and kings. I think, to your question, Ashley, you know, it's made us focus on social emotional development because it's so much more personal, and proximity matters.
Okay. Before I move to the next question, I want to let everybody know, please take the post workshop survey. We would definitely appreciate it. Tell us what you think. Be honest, because we are trying to, again, like everybody, this whole conversation, we are trying to meet the community where they are, deliver some things in terms of what they want, need, and require. So please fill out that survey. It will be coming to you all shortly after the event. But go ahead, Cancer, and ask your question. You off mute, sir. I don't want to mess with your name. Letterhage.
Oh,
Yeah, you can ask your question.
okay, can I be heard now?
Yes. Let me see. There you go. You got unmute. Uh-oh.
Am I okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I just want to say thank you very much for recognizing me. The name is Litache. I'm actually calling from South Africa. I'm in South Africa in Johannesburg. Recognizing the differences and the disparities of how you in the US are doing things, and happy to be learning as to how you do things, except that when I asked my question, I think Mr. P and Trey in some way did answer that question earlier, and I wouldn't go into the detail for that. I would give another person an opportunity to move on with the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, kind sir. I appreciate that. Very noble. So did anybody else have any additional questions? You can raise your hand on the raise your hand feature on the side, and I'll try to see if you are raising your hand. Okay. So it doesn't look like we have any further questions that I can see coming in. Let me check the chat because I know sometimes. Okay. So that is the end of the program. If nobody has any further questions, so you all got back an extra 20 minutes to enjoy the rest of your beautiful days. So take that time, have a cup of tea, enjoy yourself, decompress. I want to say thank you all on behalf of the Commission on Arts and Humanities. I want to say thank everybody for joining, for coming out today. You could have been doing anything else. So I appreciate everybody for participating. I want to give a big shout out to our panelists, Mr. P, Tara, as well as Trey, for coming in, having a discussion. I want to thank you all for being a lovely audience, engaging the questions. And again, if you want to engage, they have left their information within the chat. So as you all leave out, I'll leave it open since we are ahead of time. And just as another heads up, if you all were wanting to, engage any grants, we have Creative Spark. Go over to our website, dcarts@dc.gov, CH in the community, and some other things that we have started during the pandemic. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. CAH will be coming to you with more things, and we're going to try to get this right, be great for you all, so that we can keep delivering you all more content. So you all, thank you. You all were very great today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
No,
everyone.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Peace, you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Devon.
No, you all enjoy. Thank you.
I suppose.
See Devon.
No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you all. Very great answers. Very great answers. Very great conversation. It was wonderful. And I'll be in touch with you all super soon.
Perfect. Bye.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if there are any extra questions for me. So